you want to build some record shelves. You have a lot of records, but you need something strong. So what I did was I found some old shelves and I put steel rods inside them all the way down to the floor. The steel rods go through each shelf to the floor. What I started with were some shelves that I had gotten for free, and what they have in them is the steel rails with that system with the little metal things. Now, the only shelf that's actually mounted in it is the middle one. You can see it's like mitered in there. The rest of these are just floating. And below them I have the bolt with the washers. The main thing to do is everywhere you can where there's wood meets wood is to put in some good heavy-duty screws. I started by mounting a board to my wall studs at the middle, and I got one at the top. But I also bolstered the whole box of screws everywhere the heavy wood met, because originally, if you can see right here next to my screw, they were stapled together. Well, that's not good for record shelves. So I drilled holes through all the shelves, the bottom board, and I also drilled holes through to the top. I also found a truss to screw a screw or two in on each shelf. So the box itself, the background here, this is just like 1/4 inch stuff. This doesn't really do anything, it's just decorative. But just think of the box as the frame. So you want the frame to be square. On the back corners, I put metal L brackets on the top and bottom. There's screws going in everywhere, but the shelves are free floating, and the dead weight of the records sits on these things that are in the track, and they sit on the washer below, which I don't have that washer all the way up yet. I'm just still putting this one up. So for right now, I've got this box firmly mounted to the wall, so you know there's no way it can go this way or that way, and secured to two studs in the wall and a ceiling joist truss. So I know the box is rigid now, especially with that middle shelf in it, with screws on all sides. So now I'm just slowly putting the shelves in, and then I'll just tighten the washers and bolts until they just touch the shelf. That way it's mounted in all 4 corners. It's taken the weight, including that middle threaded rod, and I just joined the rods together with one of those little couplers. Part of what gives this strength is this center board that's screwed in on both sides, and it has a bolt on the bottom and the top of it because it's a fixed shelf. Also, the inner board here is screwed through to the board here that is screwed into the studs in the wall. So it's the inner board, I have screws going to that, then screws going through the inner board to the outer board, and not necessarily into the studs, but the back outer board is screwed into the studs. Same at the top. The top original board in the shelf is oak plywood also, and that is screwed into the top outer board, which is mounted to the studs. So the whole thing is really, you know, I mean, it's solid. And then the dead weight is all sitting, the records is all sitting on this stuff. It's not going to fall forward. It's not going to go sideways. It's a good way to brace a shelf, especially if there's going to be records on it later. Okay, well, I lowered my next bolt onto the rod, and now I'm ready for my next shelf. I have the clips on the sides in. I have this slightly lower than the shelf. And I'm going to grab one of my other shelves over here. See if I can do this with one hand. It's got the hole in it already. So what I'm going to do here is try to put it in place. And you can see the hole right there. Get that on there. Okay, so now what you got is you got the shelf sitting on both sides on the metal clips. Hey, Mitch. And now I'm just going to tighten this. You know, the whole thing is it's a little flexible, but you just tighten it so it just touches the shelf, maybe with a little upward pressure. You want the same weight load going on this to these. So if it's making the shelf stick up too far, you leave it down a little. Now, when it's all said and done, you can put a level on here, and the shelf should just stay level. I piled records on the other ones, and as long as you got that fender washer, the little washer, and a nice stainless nut. I think this is zinc. You can buy stainless threaded rod, but I think I got zinc. That I might have accidentally bought a stainless one here or there, but the zinc ones are cheaper. It's mostly for the down dead weight. All the other structure of the whole thing is being held by the boards that are hooked into the wall. I have another coupler to put on, and the rod just sticks up through that hole, and I screw a bolt up to it, but it's just for decoration. It's not really tightening to the wood at the top or the bottom. The very bottom, that rod is going through to the concrete, and it's just sitting on the concrete, you know, like just like this. It's just like sitting on the concrete. And then that bolt is, you know, just for kind of for looks also. On to the next one. One last thing I added were these metal L brackets. They're 2-inch brackets, and those are on the shelves that are free floating. You know, even though they have the washer, they had a little bit of flex to them because the back was kind of tilting up just a teeny bit once in a while. So these brackets locked them down, and it took away the flex. Well, to wrap up this video, you can see I'm still populating these shelves, and I'm kind of organizing stuff. Some of it's temporary, but the records will probably stay. I had a list of stuff. The L brackets are to lessen the flex of the shelves, you know, from back to front. There's hardly any now. That's actually the one that's mounted. You know, hardware store supplies is what I used. I used drills. I used a countersink bit. This is hardwood plywood. The shelves are made out of it, and so is the shelf. They're made out of hardwood. That's really great. In the future, for the shelves like these that are actually floating, and I might put some screws in here which are removable in case I wanted to move the shelves up and down. Like I have a bigger gap at the top, which I kind of like for taller stuff. But I can't stress enough the overall box strength of the shelves. These shelves had books on them for 25 years. Almost zero warpage on any shelves. One shelf out of about 30 shelves that I had just a teeny bit, maybe a 1/16 of an inch of a warp, but I picked ones that weren't warped. One of the shelves, I didn't tell you, were mounted in concrete. I first installed Tapcons into the concrete. Then I mounted the poplar boards. The boards that I use for the bracing behind the shelves, and under here were poplar. That's a hardwood. You could even use a harder wood than that. These shelves are 42 inches wide, two of them. One of them was 30 inches wide, and they're 12 inches deep, so the records stick out, you know, a couple inches. What else? In the future, I mounted the bolt halfway In the future, if I did this again, I might mount it another inch or so this way to keep that flex, but there's not any flex now that I have the L brackets. They're still all adjustable. It's just a pain. You'd have to take everything off. But I've made mistakes in the past, and the main thing you want to do is have a very stealth box. You mount it to the studs in the walls, you mount boards, then you mount this to that, and you make sure everywhere you can screw it together, you screw it. The rods will be next, and make sure you try to find some ceiling trusses. There's no way this thing's going to come off the wall. It's very stealth, and about all I have to do is reorganize this stuff and stain the sides that were exposed from when the shelves were all butted together in an old room. Anyway, it's been fun doing this, and I hope somebody else can benefit from this. I know I personally looked at record shelves for years and years, and the IKEA and all the other stuff, and I just didn't like it. The metal tracks, I mean, that system, there's a name for it. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but that, you know, there's no way this shelf can fall out, really, unless you put 1,000,000 pounds on it, and I've filled them up with records already. So my shelves are getting all filled up with records, and hopefully you like this video and you can make your own shelves.